You know, there's not going to be much to talk about today except I'm going to be making syrups. Welcome back. Today, as I said, talking about making syrups. Now, for those that are wondering, a couple of weeks ago I put out there that, if you wanted me to tell you how I make my syrups, then I would. And I had a couple of people reach out and say, yeah, I'd like to know. So, before I begin to tell you how I make them, let's ask, why do we use syrups? Why do bartenders use syrup? Well, the first idea of utilizing a syrup, as far as I know, comes from baking, where bakers would put sugar into lemon juice, muddle it up to be able to incorporate it, and incorporate that into their baked goods. Because granulated sugar takes a little bit of time to dissolve, and especially into something like a baked good, or even into a cocktail. So, as sugar became more used and was widely available, bartenders switched from using loaf sugar, which came in a cone shape, had special scissors that you could cut off a piece for something like the old-fashioned or the original cocktail, as I spoke about a while ago. They began using syrups. So that's where that whole story begins. Well, let's begin with the first syrup, really, which is simple syrup, which is right here. This is my simple syrup. I made a new batch for this episode and to use in the episodes going forward until I run out, and then I need to make another batch. All that simple syrup is sugar and water combined, okay? For me to make my simple syrup, I go with 2 parts sugar, 1 part water, okay? And I go by weight. Some will go by volume, others will go by weight. I go by weight. So for me, I get a digital scale, I weigh out, however much sugar I'm going to use for that batch. Let's say 200 grams of sugar. That's a lot of sugar, yes. Then I measure out half as much water. 100 grams, 99 grams, be around there. You can be plus or minus a gram or two and you'll be fine. I would recommend being slightly less than if you're going to miss, but as close to 2 to 1 as possible. Now, how do I create it? I use a stove and I use heat. So add the sugar, add the water, and go ahead and get it on the heat. Yeah, medium heat would be fine. And then what I do is I use a food grade silicone whisk, and I whisk in the sugar into the water to get it to dissolve. Once it dissolves, then let it get up to temperature, let it boil for about 45 seconds to a minute, give or take. Once it's done, kill the heat and get the pan off of the heat, okay? Then you need to prepare your bottle for bottling your simple syrup. To prepare the bottle for simple syrup, what you do is take the bottle that you're going to use, for instance, these types of bottles, and by the way, if you want to use the bottles that I use, check down below, there's a link to kit.co, has everything I utilize, including these bottles. There are Amazon affiliate links. You make the purchase, I receive kickback, it helps out the channel. Thanks in advance. So clean out the bottle, and you would want to use a bottle brush and really get a good clean on it. Hot water, dish soap, and I would recommend the night before you make your syrups to go ahead and wash and dry out your glass. Once you have that, you're going to want to boil up water in a smaller pan and utilize a funnel to put the hot water that's now boiling, not the syrup, but the hot water itself, into the glass to disinfect and sanitize the glass. There's a thought process that comes out where you could use high-proof spirit, vodka or Everclear grain alcohol, something like that, to disinfect your glassware as well. Or add it to the syrup when you pour it into the bottle to help sterilize it. Maybe that can work, but I've also heard it's very much a wives' tale, and that the best way to go about it is to, well, use hot water as the sterilizer. So you would take the hot water, put it into the bottle that you're going to use a pot holder or an oven mitt, grab the new container, swish it around to disinfect, and pour it out. After that's done and your syrup has cooled enough, add it to the bottle and be ready to put the bottle top on it. Don't go ahead and seat it until the syrup has cooled completely, okay? Because steam will rise and it may cause the bottle top to pop off. Depending on if your glass was not properly made, it may cause the glass to shatter. So for these have a flip top. I would take off the flip top, let it cool completely, and then once it's done, place on the top and you're set to go. Now, for those that want to utilize grain alcohol or vodka or Everclear to clean their glassware, you could, as I said, I think it is a wives' tale, but it could make sense because it does sterilize. What you would do is put in 2-3 ounces of the grain alcohol, rinse the glass in it, kind of like you would with absinthe for a Sazerac, and then dump it out and then add your syrup. It could work, it couldn't work. I haven't tried it, and honestly, doesn't make sense to purchase a bottle of grain alcohol or Everclear or another bottle of vodka just to sterilize a glass. Hot water is fine. And you can do this method of creating your simple syrup with any sort of sugar out there. Regular granulated sugar, which is what I use. You can use natural cane sugar. You can use turbinado or demerara sugar, which I've used before. Any one of those will work to create your simple syrup. It's preferred to use granulated sugar because it won't darken a cocktail at all, really, because it becomes clear. Unlike a turbinado or demerara sugar, which when you make that into a syrup, it will darken a cocktail significantly. So why so much sugar as I put this away? The reason being is that all of the classic cocktails and all the classic cocktail books utilize a 2-part sugar to 1-part water simple syrup. So 2-to-1 is the classic. A 1-to-1 became more modern because obviously sugar is it's a preservative. It's not entirely healthy for the body. Natural sugar is one thing, processed sugar is another. So 1-to-1 comes into vogue, and you could use that if you want to. 2-to-1 is about a third, maybe up to 35-40% sweeter than a 1-to-1 variety, but the reason that 2-to-1 is utilized is because it's toxic to any sort of mold that would want to live in there. If you are, say, you don't drink that often, you're just, maybe you're having drinks with friends for an evening, and you want to make simple syrup, you do a 1-to-1, that's completely fine. If you're doing, if you want to have simple syrup available at all times and be able to hold it for longer and have it be shelf stable, a 2-to-1 it would be the call. Also, there are some bartenders out there, most notably Trader Vic Bergeron, for those that are big tiki enjoyers, who utilize rock candy syrup. And there have also been other bartenders who just add sugar and sugar and sugar to as little water as possible and to make sure it still dissolves, because they want to have their syrups and their cocktails as sweet as possible. I don't recommend that, just because, again, it's like that becomes really sweet, and it might overpower a number of cocktails and overpower the flavor that you may want from those cocktails. Okay, again, you want to go for it. Me, not so much. So going from simple syrup, now we can get into other syrups. Most notably, let's go to raspberry syrup. Now, raspberry syrup, you may know from when I did the Clover Club. Raspberry syrup for me is a 2-part sugar, 1 part water, simple syrup that I then do a half part of raspberries into. So let's say, for the sake of the argument, I do 200 grams of sugar, 100 grams of water, and 50 grams of raspberries. From there, you take the simple syrup, do the same process for getting it on the heat. Once the sugar has dissolved, you take the raspberries that hopefully you've washed. Once you have measured out that half part raspberries, then you want to give them a little bit of a crush, just in your hand, light crush, and put them into the pot with the sugar and the water. Stir in the raspberries to get the juice into the sugar. Get it up to a boil, let it go for 35-40 seconds, cut the heat, follow the rest of the idea. For raspberry syrup, or say pineapple syrup, apple syrup, ginger syrup, whatever, there's no hard and fast statement, okay? So if you say you follow my recipe for a raspberry syrup to 1.5, you're like, I need more raspberry flavor. By all means, take this, put it back into the pot, into the pan, add some more raspberries, you're set to go. You know, there's nothing hard and fast about it. This is just how I do things, okay? Not to mention, I'm gonna go on a bit of a rant on this one. Things change from bartender to bartender, bar program to bar program, okay? Because while, let's say, I do things in one way, another bartender here on YouTube may do things another way. Find which one works for you. If you want to make cocktails how I make them, follow what I do. If you prefer what another bartender does on their YouTube channel, follow what they do. Or if you want to do a mix and match, find what works for you, completely awesome. I'm just telling you how I do things, okay? It's not a hard and fast rule. That's really about like the flavored syrups that you will get out there in terms like ginger syrup, or raspberry syrup, pineapple syrup, apple syrup, you know, if you want to make that. A same idea would be with cinnamon syrup. Again, 2 parts sugar, 1 part water, and then crush up some Ceylon cinnamon sticks, pestle and mortar, crack them, take the cinnamon, you break them, add them to the container that you're going to utilize to infuse, add the cinnamon into that, and just let the syrup pull out as much flavor as it can, or add it to the boiling syrup to extract as much of the flavor as possible. When you do an infusion, especially of something like raspberries or cinnamon or something along those lines, you'll need to strain out the solids, okay? There's ways to do this. One is through, say, a fine mesh chinois. Another way that you can do this is through a nut milk bag. I know that sounds funny to some people. The reason why it's called a nut milk bag is when you, say, take almonds or walnuts or what have you, and you blend them up to make, well, the nut milk that you're trying to create, you then strain out the solids through that to create a nut milk, whether it's almond milk, walnut milk, or any sort of nut milk out there. You can also use it, as I said, for raspberry syrup. Another thing that you can use it for is when you make strawberry syrup, which, speaking of, is right here. For those that remember my strawberry bourbon iced tea episode, which was absolutely delicious, that's what this is. To do strawberry syrup, what I did is I took a bundle of strawberries, a little pack of strawberries, cut off the tops, and then sliced them. Slice them however thick you wish, or however thin you wish. Put them into a container. I use Tupperware. You could use Tupperware as well, or you can use, say, like a glass bowl or what have you. And then I coated them in sugar. A half cup, three quarters of a cup, a full cup, completely up to you. You coat them, you put the lid on, and you shake them to coat as much of the strawberries as you can in sugar. Alright, this allows the sugar to get into the fruit and extract as much juice as it can. And you can let that go for an hour, 2 hours, 12 hours, I would say up to about 12 hours would be your maximum. Once you're ready and you've taken out as much juice as you can, add that to a pot. then you're going to want to add enough water into the Tupperware that's still holding sugar that may still have some syrup inside of it to loosen up that sugar. Make sure that gets into the pan and get it on the heat. Get it on the heat, use your whisk to incorporate the sugar into the syrup as well as much juice as possible. Strain out the solids using a chinois nut milk bag. You can even use cheesecloth if you wish. Put that into your, prepare your bottle as described earlier, and you're set to go. Now, there is a slight drawback when you make a 2-part sugar to 1-part water syrup, and that is sometimes the sugar will fall out. Even though when you add heat to a syrup, you're trying to create a solution which should be rather permanent, the sugar will form crystals at the bottom of the bottle. That's not bad, that's not mold, but it does look a little bit off-putting, but your syrup will still be fine. What you need to be careful of is looking at the syrup itself. Do you see anything growing inside of it? Do you see mold showing up on the side of it? Do you see mold growing either on top or inside the syrup itself, or going up the glass? If you do, of course, discard, wash out your glass, and then remake your syrup how you need to. So just be careful. I'll show an example right here as to what it looks like when the sugar does crystallize and go down to the bottom of the bottle. The next syrup I'm going to talk about is honey syrup, which I have here. I've had it, and it's been in my bar for a while now, and it's still as good as it was since I made it. And the reason that we do honey syrup is because honey, when you add it to cold ingredients, especially when ice is involved, it hardens into sort of an amber and becomes very difficult to dissolve and blend into a cocktail. So honey syrup is the only syrup that I utilize volumetric measurements for. So how I do that is I take honey and I put in however much honey I'm going to use. Let's say for mine it was 300 milliliters of honey. And then I did 100 milliliters of hot water, and this needs to be very hot water. 100 milliliters of very hot water, then use a whisk or your bar spoon or a regular tablespoon, what have you, and stir to get the hot water into the honey to make it easy to incorporate, easy to pour, to put into a cocktail. Now let's get into the more readily available syrups that you may hear of. I'm going to talk about Grenadine and Orgeat. I talked a little bit about ginger syrup, so we can go into that again. First, let's talk about ginger syrup. And for those that remember my Pim's Fizz episode, that utilized a ginger syrup that I created. And I didn't follow what other people may do. Some people may take ginger that's not peeled, cut into small pieces, blend it up with hot water and sugar, and create your ginger syrup that way after they strain it. Could work, I don't know. Others, in fact, I believe Eric Castro created a ginger syrup that utilized taking root ginger and passing it through a juicer. Then once you've taken as much juice as you can from the ginger, or 4 parts ginger syrup to 3 parts sugar, which makes it a very ginger forward syrup. Others will try to do their own rendition of a 2-to-1 ginger syrup of 2 parts sugar, 1 part water, and then just add as much ginger as possible. Then add a lot of water to bring it up and let it reduce, and let the water evaporate to create a 2 part sugar, 1 part water idea. For me, what I did was 2 parts sugar, 1 part water. Then I cut up ginger and I grated it, and it was about 1/2 inch to 1 inch size knob of ginger that I grated into the syrup. Let it incorporate for a couple hours. Tasted it, had the heat I was looking for, strained it, bottled it, ready to go. Full disclaimer, that episode was shot back in late October 2023, and when I went to take a look at the syrup, mold had grown by late December 2023. So you might want to be careful about doing that for the ginger syrup. The next is Orgeat. Now, what is Orgeat? Well, this is Orgeat. This is Gifford's, and I don't make my own. Reason being is because, well, though you could, I personally have not, just because I guess it is laziness. But what Orgeat is almond milk that gets converted into a syrup, which would be 2 parts sugar, 1 part of your almond milk, and then, get that on the heat, maybe add some orange blossom water or orange flower water to add a bit of a floral note to it. And this would be used to help add a subtle creaminess and a subtle nuttiness to a cocktail. Most notable would be, say, the Mai Tai or the Japanese cocktail, which I've done both. But I typically go with the prepared stuff. As I said, I have Gifford. Another brand of Orgeat that bartenders will enjoy or have recommended would be Small Hand Foods. In fact, I believe one of my fellow YouTube bartenders actually said that they based their Orgeat recipe on Small Hand Foods. And how you would make it would be, if you want to go with actual almonds and do it yourself, you could take almonds, take water, blend it up to create as much almond milk as possible, and then pass that through a juicer, like say a masticating juicer, and you get a full flavored, full fat almond milk. And then do the syrup recipe, and then add a little bit of orange flower water. Another way to do Orgeat would be to use an unflavored with no sugar added almond milk, and then do the syrup recipe that I've given you, and create your Orgeat that way. I haven't done them. They could be just fine. If you do that and it works for you, awesome. The final one I'm going to talk about is Grenadine. This baby right here. Grenadine is one of the more iconic syrups out there, okay? And if you see Grenadine at the grocery store and it's coming from roses, that's not actually Grenadine. It just looks like it. But if you see the Grenadine I have here, compared to what you see at the grocery store, there's a deeper color, and there's also going to be deeper flavor in this. Because Grenadine is not cherry flavor, it's not red flavor, it's pomegranate. It's pomegranate juice that's been sweetened with sugar. Why is it called Grenadine? Because if you look up the another name for pomegranates, it's grenadines. I believe that's French. And if you open up a pomegranate, you'll see little seeds. In fact, it somewhat reminds me of a fragmentation grenade, with the little pieces inside. Things explode with a fragmentation grenade and shrapnel's flying. To make grenadine, you're going to want to have a bottle of unflavored and sugar-free pomegranate juice. Most notably, Palm Wonderful is perfect for it. Take a bottle, it could be an 8-ounce bottle, could be a 16-ounce bottle, whatever. This actually came from an 8-ounce bottle. You're going to want to measure that. And I used a scale for this as well to measure by weight. Because even though it's 8 fluid ounces, in grams that could be 255 grams, 260 grams, 220 grams, who knows, of that pomegranate juice. For this bottle, it was 252 grams of pomegranate juice. So to go to 2 parts sugar and 1 part liquid, obviously I had to take double the amount of sugar and then put that into the pot and get it on the heat. After the sugar dissolved, I then took pomegranate molasses and added 2-3 ounces, mainly eyeballed, into that pomegranate syrup that's been created to really deepen and enrich the pomegranate flavor inside. let it come up to the boil for about 30-40 seconds, give or take. Cut the heat, give it a whisk to make sure that everything's combined, and then I took roughly 1/8 of a bottle cap full of orange blossom water or orange flower water. I use Cortas for my pomegranate molasses as well as my orange blossom water. Add that to it, stir it in, let it cool. Prepare your bottle and bottle it as always. And for something like this where you're going to want to use a 750 milliliter bottle, which is what this is, you may want to use a silicone bottle stop like this. Once it's cooled, add the stopper and you're set to go. You have Grenadine. And by the way, you can use Grenadine for anything. Grenadine gets used for it gets used for like the El Presidente. It was used in the monkey gland. Gets used for the iconic non-alcoholic drink, the Shirley Temple. And it can be used in a dirty Shirley if you want to use vodka instead of using carbonated water. But you know, I think that's it really. If you have any questions about anything that I do, let me know in the comments below and I'll add a follow-up video to this if you want. You know, I think that does it for all of the syrups I make on my show. So, if you like the video, then please hit the like button, comment, subscribe, and share the video, please. If you want to use any of the barware that I use on my show, the bottles, bottle tops, you know, anything that I utilize, check down below to the link at kit.co. It has everything I utilize in my bar there. They're all Amazon affiliate links, which means if you make a purchase of the item, I receive a bit of the kickback. It helps out the channel. Thank you in advance. Find all my socials in the description below as well. I will also be getting back to streaming, so you can find me at my streaming socials right here. I plan to go live on Saturday nights at 8 p.m. where we can talk about the show, talk about cocktails, maybe have a drink, enjoy some gaming, and you know, just generally have a nice chill time. Until next time, thank you for watching. I will be back real soon with another cocktail. This has been The Beginner's Bar.